Welcome. You are listening to Sharegiving Secrets with Deborah Greenhut. If you are a family caregiver or expect to be one, and you want to maintain your well-being while caring, then you are in the right place. I am your host, Deborah Greenhut, speaker, author, and rational caregiver advocate. I'm a family caregiving veteran, bringing you survival secrets and experiences from experts who share the goal of doing less by managing more. We need to invent and reinvent family care, and together we're going to do it. My big idea is rational caregiving, and my motto is, let your brain lead your heart. Please share yours in the comments. Sharegiving Secrets, because friends don't let friends be caregivers alone. Let's do this. Welcome, everyone. Today we have a kind of different experience going on the Sharegiving Secret, and I'm very happy to introduce to you the wine guy, Nick Elliott. And I want to talk about many things with Nick because he's been everything from a caregiver to a sommelier to a world traveler. And I thought this might be a great respite for caregivers because we're often into those heavy subjects where we're looking for a solution and there isn't one, but everybody can take a break, a few minutes, and watch a beautiful show about being in another place. And it's one of those 20-minute vacations that you can't afford to take otherwise, but you've got the time now, so let's do it. So hi, Nick, how are you today?
Deborah, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Very nice to have you here too. So let's talk about caregiving first. We like to think it's something that happens across the generations. So I've been a mom, a parent, a parent caregiver, and a grandparent caregiver, and a sibling, and the whole lot of other people were in that story. So it's not just one thing we do when people get older and we're trying to help them through their last part of life, but it also supports life functions. So I know you've been a caregiver too. Would you be happy to share with our audience about some of those experiences, please?
Yeah, absolutely. We back in 2004, I guess it was, at this point, my wife and I were talking about becoming parents. It was shortly after our marriage, and we wanted to become parents, and neither one of us really wanted to go to the traditional way. She is adopted herself. I have a lot of adoption in my family as well, so it was a natural thing for us to look at it as at adoption as an option to be parents. So we went through those motions, and we were lucky enough about 3 years later, after a lot of paperwork and crying and heartache and all of that stuff, to bring home our son from Guatemala at about 10 months of age. And it was the best thing that ever happened to us, 100%. Um, I was well into business at that point, and my wife and I decided that it was more important for our son to have a full-time parent as opposed to well, maybe it's more traditional now, with daycare and things like that. And we wanted one of us to be home. So the decision was made for me to stay home with our son. And did that for about 3 or 4 years, 3.5 years, until he went into, the pre-K. And that, I mean, what an experience that was, to taking care of, this little human being, and, helping shape the way they talk and the way they act and their personality, but also allowing their little personality to blossom as well. And that was really an amazing part of my life.
I really enjoyed hearing that story, and especially because it encompasses the joyful aspect of caregiving, to be able
Yes.
to give to someone and enjoy how they grow. And those are some of the happier moments that we can imagine. And I imagine some challenges along the way as well, because being
Of course.
being a parent is not an easy thing. Some kids are easier than others, but there are an awful lot of stresses in that. Can you talk about a strategy you like to use as a parent that might be helpful to the other parents who might be watching our show today?
Oh my goodness. You know, it's I very much encouraged my son, and we only have the one child by design, because my wife and I are very career focused. But it's always been very important for me as a strategy to let him be his own person. To allow him to go in the directions that made sense for him, all while being protective and making sure that he is heading in the right direction. I have my son has some learning challenges. He was diagnosed with dyslexia and dysgraphia, as well as ADHD at a pretty young age. So there are some learning differences and challenges, that come with that, not only on the education side, but the parenting side, as well. So there's and again, looking at this through the lens of a parent is allowing them to be who they want to be, and let them grow, and I used the word blossom before, let them do their thing, but still being protective and without that umbrella parenting or that helicopter parenting, I guess is the strategy that I personally used for my son.
Yeah, I think the question of autonomy for the person who's being cared for is so important across the ages, across the spectrum. I remember my dad was so afraid I would start making decisions for him after my mom died. And that wasn't what I wanted to do, but I also found he wasn't able to make those decisions by himself in many cases. And it's almost like having a child again when your parent is much older, and
Yes.
especially after a tragedy. But at the other end of the deal, when you are a parent yourself and you have a young child, and there's a lot to find out about the child as they grow, the same kind of problem can result because they want their autonomy too.
Yes.
Do it by myself was what my kids used to say to me all the time, and I'm sure there's a lot of that that many people have to deal with as well. So the transition then back into working on your particular interests, how did that go
Mhm.
as the child became a little more independent, so maybe you could do more of those things? Tell me about your transition back into work, because many caregivers have to go through a phase like that. For one reason or another, caregiving is over or less demanding. And how
Right.
do I reinvent myself? So what did you do?
Yeah, in my situation, of course, it was him getting into school and going to school, 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day, 8 hours a day, however long it was. So it gave me a little bit more freedom um, uh, to explore options for myself work-wise, and that was an interesting time for me. I did start working part-time. That led to a little more part-time and a little more part-time and a little more part-time, and to the point where I was working, a good 60 hours a week, on my job, or multiple jobs at that point. Um, but I think it's important. We hear people say it all the time, is that balance. Balance is very, very important in our lives. And, as a caregiver, it is important to have that in your life, so you don't get burned out. I'm sure there is a lot of burnout, in the not only the professional caregiving industry, but the familial caregiving industry, and that's what I didn't want for myself or for my family. So I really did try to find that balance between what I enjoyed doing, and my responsibilities as a father and as a husband as well.
So, what was the first step back? Where in your universe of interest what did you tackle first?
So I dove into without giving you a crazy amount of background, my family owns a winery and vineyard in Central California that also doubles as a wedding venue. So I had been in the hospitality and food industry for many years prior to that happening in 2006. Um, and one of the great things about being in that industry is you get to meet so many people, not only clients, but also people that you're working with, laterally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I met these wonderful caterers, John and Nancy. They're still dear friends to this day. And as I was transitioning back into the workforce, with my background in culinary and wine, I was able to get a part-time job with them, helping them in their catering business, which I absolutely loved doing. And then that transitioned me into a bunch of other things. And I eventually went to work for the family full time and left the job with John and Nancy. But that was a fun and labor intensive but fun transition back into the workforce.
So it sounds like there's a lot of nurturing in whatever you have chosen to do throughout your life, whether it was the grapes. I'm not sure if you worked on the in the vineyards yourself.
I did, yep.
So you have that experience as well, and that requires a certain caregiver mentality in order to preserve the quality
Yes,
and the enjoyable aspects of that can transition over into other types of caregiving. You know how things grow, and you
yes,
and I don't need to tell you, but I'm telling our listeners that that's quite a remarkable experience to see something from seed to its ending, um, to or its necessary destination, um, to have that kind of progress. And I think it helps people also to watch a child grow and be patient about that kind of labor, because sometimes things don't go exactly the way you thought, or there isn't enough rain, and maybe there's not enough attention. So all of those things conspire. And that gave you quite a full 360-degree view, I think, of that experience too. Um,
yes.
so I'm putting words in your mouth, so I should let you talk. As you moved out of the catering business, I know that you mentioned to me travel as well. So how did those things begin to integrate?
Well, interestingly enough, well, I've always loved to travel, definitely. And John and Nancy, who I mentioned earlier, who were my mentors in the catering business, we actually used to travel quite a bit together, my wife and myself and John and Nancy, and that was a lot of fun, usually within the boundaries of California. But that was really a lot of fun getting around, and all of us being foodies, we got to go to great restaurants and have a great time and drink great wine and all of those things. And it was about the same time when our son was old enough to be able to go with grandparents or brothers and sisters or whatever the case is. That's when my wife and I decided to start traveling a little more extensively. So it was probably around age 5, something like that. And getting to Europe. We love Central America. My whole family does. My son is Guatemalan, so going to Central America and experiencing Guatemala and Belize and Costa Rica, among other Panama, among others, was so much fun. And part of the thing that I talk about on my show is how travel makes us better human beings. Getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of your silo, if you want, makes you a better person. And I believe that to the core of my soul is if you can get out and experience what other people experience out there in the world, because their experience is going to be completely different from yours. If you can get out there and experience what they experience and be empathetic, to their experience, whether that's better than yours or worse than yours. I hate to do that, but I can't think of another term right now. That makes you a better person, in my opinion. And that's my favorite part about travel.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my relatives had a business in Cuba in the 1950s, and I always romanticized it in my mind. And then, of course, the crisis came, and lots of
Right.
people came here. But I always thought one day I would love to see what he saw because he communicated so beautifully about it. That was my uncle, and he would send me these marvelous letters describing everywhere he went. And when I went there, I saw pieces of that, and I could actually see why he loved it so. And at the same time, I saw what had happened to the place that he loved, and there was a lot of
Yes.
devastation there. And I don't know if we understand it, but also the fact that people had cable TV, they had network news, and they knew what was happening in my country much better than I knew what was happening in theirs. So
Right. Right.
certainly there's a lot to be learned. And what we used to think of as maybe the grand tour of Europe, there are a lot of places you could go and a lot that you can enjoy in terms of the food and the wine as well. Um,
Of course.
can you tell me, for my listeners, about how my listeners can access what you do? How can we get in touch with that and enjoy that beautiful respite of seeing beautiful food and beautiful culture? Where do I find you?
Absolutely. The first place I would recommend, I do a weekly podcast that's called Pour and Explore, and it's a wine, a food, and a travel podcast. And it's not a clinical podcast where I'm talking about grapes and they go into all of that stuff. It's meant to be very story based and very educational based, but also very much from the heart and stories, people's stories. So I do a weekly episode. I do interview episodes as well as solo episodes. So it's a great way to hear other people's stories. If you love to, if you're a foodie, or if you're a wine lover, or if you just love to travel, or all three, I talk about all different types of things. But the string that binds it all together is people, is understanding the human condition through the lens of those things. That's what I tried to do. So I just started the podcast earlier this year. January 1st was my very first episode, so I'm on about episode number 35 right now. But that's a great place to learn about myself and to learn about the amazing people that I interview and their fantastic stories. So Pour and Explore, that's available on all of the major podcast platforms and YouTube.
That's great. So there is a video version as well. So you can,
Yes.
do you demonstrate some of the things you're talking about on the video?
So I am just about to start doing actual cooking demos on the podcast. I was waiting to build up my audience a little bit more to where it was attractive for them to actually come to YouTube and watch it. Me doing what I do. So I've got a beautiful kitchen here in the house. So I love definitely want to show that off and do some amazing things. So that will be coming up soon.
Do you have a favorite meal that you're anxious to share with us, visually anyway?
Oh, my favorite thing to cook in the world is a French dish that uses lots of wine called coq au vin. I don't know if you're familiar. Coq au vin is basically chicken with wine. And it's a braised chicken dish with vegetables, carrots, onions, whatever you feel like putting in it. There's usually potatoes, maybe sometimes mushrooms, and it's several bottles of red wine wine and a little chicken broth, and you just braise it down till the chicken's just falling off the bone. And I love making that dish. It's just such delicious comfort food, and you serve that over maybe some mashed potatoes or some rice, and it's amazing.
Well, as a former French major, I'm hoping that I get an invite when you actually show that on your show. Be a lot of fun
Guarantee it.
today. You mentioned one other thing that's so important where I sit. I do a lot of memoir coaching in addition to working with caregivers, and the idea of story is so profound. What is it for you that makes that so attractive, makes it so important to your podcast?
It's again, it brings us together when someone knows your story, like really knows your story, or at least part of it, um, hears you say it in your own voice, whether that's written or out loud. It again, I think it makes us better people, because we can take in that information, and whatever effect it might have on our life, hopefully it's a positive one, and then take that along with you to the rest. And that's why podcasts are so powerful. Podcasts are so powerful because regular people, again, I don't know if that's the right term, but regular people didn't necessarily have this platform before to be able to tell our stories, and then also bring stories out of other people in this universal way. And I'm so glad that we have this opportunity now.
I'm just delighted by that. I think the best teachers we have were always the storytellers who demonstrated things and helped us to empathize and feel along with
Yes.
the characters. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So we're very close to the end of our experience here together, and I'm sad to see that. But I wondered if you have any other links, which we will put in the show notes, any other places that people can reach out to you or find you so they can follow this wonderful trail that you are blazing for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got profiles on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. I'll make sure that you have all of that information. I'll send that along to you, and I would love to help promote what you're doing. I think it's very, very important. What you're putting out there in the world, and more people need to learn about it. So, thank you so much for the opportunity.
My pleasure, Nick. Any last message for my audience that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Enjoy each other's company. Have a great meal. Have a glass of wine, and have fun.
To life. Thank you.
To life.
Thank
L'chaim.
thank you for being with my guest today. It was really a delicious and wonderful experience, and I'm so glad that we could do it. Bye-bye.
My pleasure, my dear. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me today on the Sharegiving Secret. I love sharing insights and stories to empower you on your caregiving journey. If you like what you hear, you can dive deeper by picking up a copy of my pamphlet, Non-Negotiables for Caregivers. Go to my website, deborahgreenhut.com, and click on the link for Non-Negotiables for Caregivers. Until next time, keep sharing, keep caring, and remember, you're not alone on this journey. Thank you for listening.